Welcome to the GameSpot Show. On today's episode, Tamoor shares his thoughts on the first Berserker, Khazan, and Jean-Luc takes us on a jaunt through post-apocalyptic England with Atomfall.
Hey there, sir. $1. Thank you very much.
And now for your host, Kurt Indovina.
Just got here in the nick of time. Welcome to the GameSpot Show, folks. I'm your host, Kurt Indovina, and we're talking about a bunch of games. Not the second, but the first Berserker, Shaka Khan. Great band. We have a big old show. We have Tamoor Hussain here, who you'll see in a second. We also have a Jean-Luc Seipke coming in for Atomfall, a game about being British. Again, we'll find out with the British person next to me. But now that and also, we're live. That's right, kids. You're watching the Power Block, which means whatever you see happens, it happens. It's meant to be. That's how fate has allowed to be. All right, let's. Oh, is it? Hello? Who? Oh. I guess we'll find out who that. Anyways, Tamoor Hussain.
Yeah, well, that was weird.
Who was that?
I don't know. That might have been the first Berserker, Khazan.
Khazan?
Settlers of
Khazan?
Khazan?
Is it Khazan or Khazan?
Who knows? You tell me.
Second Berserker.
Is it Khazan or Khazan?
As I mentioned, you are our resident Souls-like person.
Yes.
What does that mean when I say that?
That means I like Souls-like games.
A liker of Souls.
Actually, I wouldn't say I like Souls-like games.
You like Souls games.
I like Souls games, but the amount of Souls-likes I like are staggeringly low. Like I can think of maybe one I would unequivocally say this is a game I would recommend for people who like Souls games.
What one is that?
Lies of P.
Okay.
Other than that, you can get games that have the flavor of a Souls-like, but rarely the magic.
And where does first Berserker Khazan?
So I feel like it doesn't quite have the magic of a Souls game, but it is a good Souls-like.
What's the magic of a Souls game?
The magic of the Souls game is it's kind of an imperceptible, almost like unique quality. It's like, what is the magic of a Nintendo platformer versus any other platformer? There's a special something that they have. That's what it is from like a vibes and like emotional perspective. From a design perspective, it isn't quite as accomplished and thoughtful in the way that the world is constructed. It's closer to Neo in that it's all mission based. And because it's mission based, it has a degree of linearity to it, which allows it to do different things that are perhaps a little more unique to it than something like a Souls game. But because of the way it's formatted and the style of gameplay, it feels closer to an action RPG with Souls-like elements than a traditional Souls-like, which is where I'd put something like Neo as well. I know people think of Neo as a Souls-like, but for me, it plays much quicker than a Souls game. And I don't treat it in that same way. Having said that, it's still an enjoyable game. I think it's an enjoyable action RPG, which is what our reviewer, Richard Wakeling, said.
I was just going to say, reviewed by the very prolific Richard Wakeling, who's put his fingerprints on many reviews. Yeah. Richard did also mention Neo, as well as the one thing I always find, people, when they talk about Souls games, people are always so focused on this like loop of like, well, first off, is it hard? Is always like the first thing that people assume Souls games are hard. Yeah. Two, it's this loop of dying, learning from death, coming back, enemies respawn, you get your shit back, and you go back into it, and you do it, and you do it, and you do it, until you figure it out. But the underlying thing that I feel like Souls games have always done better than most games, despite their presentation, is their damn story. The stories of all those games are fantastic.
Yeah.
I guess let's start with the maybe not so exciting part of it, is its story, which is weird because it's also based in like...
Yeah, it takes place in the Dungeon Fighter universe, which Dungeon Fighter, I will hold my hand up and say like I wasn't super familiar with it until a few years back, and I also forgot that it existed until Khazan. But I believe it began life as a mobile MMO RPG style universe. But the last time I encountered it was for a fighting game called DNF Duel, which I also reviewed, and I didn't really find myself super into the story there. It was more mechanically speaking, the fighting game element of it that I really enjoyed and reviewed based on that. And Khazan is in a similar place where it does take place in that universe, but you do not need to know anything of it to enjoy Khazan, because the story is very, very basic. You play as Khazan, who is a
Berserker.
He's the first Berserker. He's a war hero who, along with one other person or two other people, killed a Berserker dragon and saved the kind of the lands. But then, for some reason, is tried for treason, found guilty, and then punished for it.
Is he guilty? Is he
Who knows? Who knows? And here's the thing: who cares?
That's a sign of a good story.
Exactly.
Who
That's
gives
the
a
thing.
shit?
There's like he's being transported. They've like for some reason severed the tendons on his limbs, so he can't move around because apparently he's too dangerous or whatever. He's that cool.
Wait, but he's running around?
No. So then he is possessed by something called Blade Phantom, not to be confused with the video game Phantom Blade.
Which is also not a Souls-like.
No.
Phantom Blade's on record, not a Souls-like.
Blade Phantom is kind of the amalgamation of the spirits of various warriors throughout time, and it is looking for a body to inhabit so it can do something with Charon has master of the Netherworlds. They keep saying we have to save the Netherworlds. In my brain, I just go, they need to save the Netherlands, which is way more fun in my mind.
They have no idea that they're in trouble. The Netherlands are just like, we're what?
Yeah, so the balance between the real world and the Netherworld is messed up. Charon's there and he's very upset about this, and he's like, you guys go out and figure this out. So they come and like, we need a body to figure this out. And Khazan's there and he's like, I'm trying to get revenge because I got screwed over by the people I just helped. They combine, and then that's kind of like where their journey begins.
How much of the story is it like, so I guess in the terms of a Souls game, is it given to you the way Souls games traditionally give you story, or is it much?
Yes and no. So I've read a lot of item descriptions, and most of them are pretty forgettable and unimportant. Like they have a good bit of color on the thing that you're picking up, but they don't often, or very rarely, will they allude to a larger universe that is being pieced together bit by bit. I played for a chunk of the game, and I could not tell you what's going on. There are smaller stories within it, like you can interface with like the remnants of souls of other characters that have died, like just random NPCs, and when you absorb them, you'll get a brief audio clip saying like, "Oh, my family,
my stomach hurts.
Yeah,
can you call my mom?
I hope I get to see my kids in 1 hour," and then you can see they've been like beheaded in front of you, and you're like, that person didn't see their kids, and that's
unless they did it.
Unless they did, yeah.
So combat.
Combat is where the meat and potatoes of this game is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, considering this has been the formula of Souls-likes have been done over and over and over again, and continue to be done. Where and how does this game stand on its own?
I think it doesn't do much in terms of making it unique, but I don't think that's to its detriment. I think what it does is it takes kind of familiar mechanics and design ideas and just tries to execute them in its own way. And what I mean by that is like you're pretty much playing an action game, but what makes this unique is it's got a good feel to it. When you hit and you get hit, you get a nice chunky kind of like feel to everything.
Can you describe the chunk?
The chunk is like, imagine like you have a sword, and no, imagine you have a relatively sharp knife, but it's a small knife.
Okay.
It's like not a butter knife, just like a steak knife, a steak knife, right? And then you're like stabbing large slabs of meat. And every time you do it, like a little bit of it's coming off, and you're like, oh yeah.
That's how the game feels.
It's like what I imagine like Wolverine handling a Twinkie feels like.
A Twinkie?
A Twinkie, like because he's like, oh, I've destroyed this. Really it felt great.
Okay.
But now my adamantium is covered in cream.
You've never had a Twinkie?
No, I don't know what Twinkie is.
Do you know what a Twinkie feels like?
Not at all. I assume it's spongy.
Very pillowy and spongy, right?
Wolverine would get through that. But it has a good feel to it. It has that like screen shake. It's got good audio. Gameplay-wise, it has the format of a Souls-like, where you approach an enemy usually one at a time, and then there's like this dance back and forth. But the actual pacing of it is much quicker. It feels closer to almost like a Devil May Cry, but without necessarily the fluidity that allows you to move from one move to another, so that it feels almost like you're unstoppable at times. It has the kind of momentum-based stuff where it's like you have a stamina meter gauging what you can do,
sure.
And then you have to be careful about stepping back and forth. However, it is kind of in the Sekiro realm as well, where
there's a lot of parrying.
A lot of parrying. Parrying is important. You can block most things, and it doesn't really do a big amount of damage. You lose stamina, and if you block too much, you leave yourself open. So that is a viable strategy for people who aren't super into like timing-based parries. But if you are, it has that. And it's got like multiple types of parries. They call it a brink guard, where you press the guard button on the brink of getting hit. And that will do a standard parry, and you can have abilities that, will do damage when you do that, or take less stamina. There's also another type of parry, which is like it's almost like a counter attack, but you have to time it so the animation overlaps with the attack coming in, and it's a much longer animation. It's almost like trying to parry or in a Monster Hunter game, where there's like a laboriousness to that move instead of just being a quick, like arm up kind of thing. That's a part of the chunk. That one is a little more, that's much more risky, but what you get is you basically stop the enemy in their tracks. So whereas a normal parry, if it's a multi-hit attack, they can keep going and you have to like keep hitting it. And then the third type of parry is like if you can charge standard and like heavy attacks, so they do more damage. And while you're charging that, you can unlock an ability where if you are charging it and someone attacks you, you can like with one hand parry and then carry on with your attack. Again, a little more risk to that, but it is still doable. So that parry suite of abilities kind of places it in the Sekiro realm. I think it's good at...
But this Neo thing is what you kind of...
The mission-based stuff, yeah. Again, like, it places in it in the same kind of like category when it comes to parrying as Sekiro. I don't think it's done as well. It's not as refined, because ultimately what it's trying to do is be over the top and be like fun in a bombastic way and fun in a anime kind of way.
Yeah.
I think of it as it is to Dark Souls what Guilty Gear is to Street Fighter.
Okay.
Where it's like Guilty Gear is all about over the top swinging cinematic moves and animations that are designed to make everything look cool, whereas Street Fighter is a little more like methodical. You have very tight timings and like there's almost like a kind of purity to that. Whereas the other game is like, trying to make you feel cool. And that's what it is. So there's things that happen that, because of that, it can get in the way of or undermine the gameplay. Stuff like when you hit an enemy and you charge an attack, you get this red aura around you and you let it go and it feels awesome. You swing your thing and there's a shockwave and that kind of stuff. So it looks amazing. The problem is when you're charging that thing and an enemy is doing a move which covers their hand in a red aura, you're like, is that mine or is that theirs? I can't, like the readability goes down. And that happens a lot because you kind of like, they're sacrificing that readability and that kind of precision for making it look, feel, and sound cool, which I think works. It works. And if you are the kind of player who you've played enough of these games that you can you have like that instinct for it and that kind of muscle memory, you will be able to overcome that. Like Sekiro, for as much as an action game it is, it's also a rhythm game. So once you've heard the first two attacks, usually if you're familiar with that game system, you know how it's going to play out and you're able to adjust without even seeing it. So like in my case, like I can do Sekiro and not really look at the screen because I can hear it. It's a rhythm game. And there is that element to this as well. However, if you're not well attuned to that style of gameplay and you're just using your visual cues, it can become a bit frustrating at times when you're like, I couldn't see that move coming at me. So it's not, I didn't really have a good chance of it. But I wouldn't say that's like a game killer at all. The game is built around gear. You get loads of gear, which makes you look different. Changes stats up and down, that kind of stuff, which is cool. The core of the gameplay is mainly built around weapon types.
Okay.
So you
the one thing I was before we get into weapon types, the one thing is like, I was going to ask you, how does this stand in the midst of Souls-like games, especially for you as a seasoned Souls person? But you did at least mention, it's like the Guilty Gear Street Fighter in that way.
Yeah.
It's like the anime, version of the Souls game, the Souls genre and stuff.
This is what this is the CyberConnect 2 version, or like the whoever it may be, like whoever the fighting game equivalent of that is, their version of a Souls-like, or is.
But I'm still curious as to, aside from the aesthetic and like the sprinkle of different things, like how do you think this thing has the capacity to stand on its own as an entry point, or more specifically, do you think this has the thing to stand on its own for people who are seasoned Souls players?
Yeah, I think it's one of those games where if you come at it knowing you're not going to get as rich and deep a world and story as you perhaps expect from a From game, I think you'll have fun. Like I'm having fun with the game.
Is it hard?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard in that way that I feel like the balance of hard, making it challenging versus giving you enough of a opportunity to understand it and figure it out isn't as kind of like balanced and as refined as it is in a From game. You often will reach bosses that feel like they're just shredding you. And that's where the one thing that game does noticeably different from other Souls games and Souls-like games kind of kicks in, where every time you take a crack at a boss and lose, it gives you a bit of Souls. Like, I think they call it lacrima in this game. But instead of losing it and that's it, you often are given a small amount and then you very easily can collect what you lost. So almost every time you take an attempt at it, you're moving towards leveling up something. And I think that's where the kind of loop of getting better at it comes. Instead of just being like, I'm going to figure this out based on watching the animations and knowing what I can do, you can kind of brute force it just by failing repeatedly and then basically grinding out free EXP that they give you for it, which I think is kind of interesting. It's not something that I've seen in any of From games, and it is a good way to approach having that level of like frustration from dying while also not making you feel completely at a loss, because some From games can make you feel that way because you're like, there's nothing else that I can do that can help me other than going and grinding, which is a very slow and laborious process in From's games.
Top 3 Souls-like games.
Top 3 Souls-like games?
Souls-like.
Lies of P is probably one. I guess Hollow Knight probably counts as one. And then I'd maybe put this one there.
What would be competing for the third? What do you think?
So I want to say Nioh, but I wasn't someone that really enjoyed Nioh. Like I enjoyed Nioh, but I didn't really like stay with me. I was like, yeah, I get this. I'm moving on. From a gameplay standpoint, I think maybe Nioh or Nioh 2, but for me, this Khazan feels closer to what I would want out of a Souls-like game than perhaps Nioh is.
And the moment you're done with the first Berserker Shaka Khazan,
Shaka Khan,
you could go play that what is it, DNF?
DNF Duel if you want a fighting game. Yeah.
Is Khazan in DNF Duel?
I don't think so.
Because he can't walk.
I mean, there was a point where he could. I don't remember much about DNF Duel. It was a really long time ago, and time is a flat circle right now.
Wow.
But if you want more of that universe, it's out there. I have no kind of curiosity around it. Having played 2 of those games in those universes, I'm willing to take them for what they are in the moment and be done with them there. I don't feel the need to dig any deeper.
But they're,
But they are there, and there is clearly content there for people who might. It might work
for all genres.
Yeah, it might work for you. Who
Until
knows?
we get a first-person shooter.
Yeah, the first shooter, Khazan.
The card game unless it already exists.
It probably does. Yeah, I'm sure there's in there somewhere.
All right. Well, Tam's coming back because at the end of this episode, we're going to add it to our very chaotic GameSpot power ranking board of fun and games and reviews. But in the meantime, chill out, stay tuned, drink some water. Maybe call your guardian. Let them know they're doing okay. Or let them know you're doing okay. I don't know. Pet your dog or cat or turtle. I don't know. Just hang out for a second. We'll be right back with Jean-Luc Seipke to talk about Atomfall. We're back. We're here. Atoms have fallen. No, they haven't. They don't really talk about Atomfall and Atomfall, do they? A little bit. There's like once a time. Maybe once. Maybe twice. Maybe you would know better than me. I'm Kurt Indavina. This is Jean-Luc Seipke. Joining us before was Tamoor Hussain, who's going to sit right over there.
Just going to breathe heavily the entire
real
time.
heavy. You didn't play Atomfall.
No, I did not.
But you read the review.
Yes, I definitely, as the de facto reviews editor, I definitely read
Graded,
that
you were like,
review.
no.
No, I don't read it.
No, I didn't do
I
it.
just point at people and say, do this. And
Just
then
write
that's it.
that. Jean-Luc Seipke played it.
Aye.
Played a whole bunch of it.
Finished it.
And I'm also, this is one of those occurrences where I too have played a lot of this game. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, it's the Oberon of Atomfall speaking to me. Anyways, it's a game. For those of you who don't know, it's done by Rebellion Studios, who is most well known for its Sniper Elite games and the zombie sniper
Zombie Army.
sniper game. So
Although I looked up them, and they've actually done a ton of stuff before.
it just so happens that those
Well,
are
the
the
last decade they've been primarily just Sniper Elite, but pre that they've been around for a while. They've done like everything.
I want to clear the air on this game because, and it's probably to the game's own fault, Rebellion's fault, in which the constant comparison to other games and other things, which is only natural because it's a new IP, it's a new thing.
Is the Souls-like?
The Souls-like.
Yeah, it's Souls-like.
Yeah, I mean, sorry kids, this is not an RPG Fallout game. This is a Souls-like.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. No, not at all. Not in the slightest. To clear the air, what would you call it in a sentence?
If I had to like compare it to something,
No. How would you definitively explain what this game is?
I would describe it as a survival RPG. Well, RPG light. You know, it's not like it has RPG. I guess the term RPG is kind of nebulous, right? Like, but when I say RPG, I mean like there are quests where you can have multiple outcomes.
You can tailor your play style.
You can tailor your play style.
You kind of can do.
You can play stealthy. You can play, in that sense, it's actually kind of more immersive sim-ish, but I also wouldn't call it an immersive sim. It's this weird amalgamation of many genres.
Different.
It's different.
And you know what one thing you didn't call it that I would?
What?
A detective game.
It is kind of a detective game. That's actually maybe one of my favorite things about this game is how they very smartly take what is essentially a quest log and they just say, we're not going to call it quests, we're going to call them leads. And by doing that, and by also not saying what is like a main lead versus a side lead, they're all just leads, everything feels potentially really significant and important.
Yeah, everything is treated everything you find is treated on the same level as one another. And so even if you meet someone who's like, oh, I got a sick husband, you gotta go find some medicine in the forest. But what you don't understand is like that what sounds like a side quest actually leads
could lead into one of the game's endings.
Yeah, exactly.
But you have no idea, which I think is great. I think and that's this game's strength is it deliberately just like does not give you all the information that I think most games do. You know, it doesn't give you like a big flashing like objective go here marker. Mm-hmm. Instead, it tells you like here's some coordinates.
Yep.
Go look them up. And it's not. This isn't like when you say detective game, I do think people would be like, oh, like am I solving puzzles or am I like, like am I having to rack my brain? Like it's not complicated. It's just that it requires you to like actually like read like a little bit. Like you just gotta read a little bit. And the reading itself is
reading. Tam is out. I want to press buttons.
I was gonna ask like that puts a lot of pressure on the actual writing, right? Like if everything is potentially important and you keep encountering things that aren't written really well and could potentially feel like wasting your time, that could be a problem. Does it feel like that?
I do think that's where this game is pretty misleading. Yeah. Or like how Jean-Luc was trying to describe the game is like, please go ahead. Like, I want your take on the writing part because I have my own kind of take on it.
Well, I mean, to me, the writing I think does a really good job of constantly providing you like little nuggets of information and breadcrumbs that like keep you intrigued and engaged. I don't know if I'd call the writing like world class or anything, but at no point did it feel lacking. Like I found every character to at least be like somewhat engaging or interesting or having like sympathetic.
Would you say every piece of evidence or lead that you find feels substantial?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Or
And I think that's the strength of the game.
Or even if it's not like initially, at first you're like, is this substantial? It leads to something substantial.
Yeah.
You know, so like there's like a major character, like a doctor, a scientist, that I would discover in notes or have characters mentioned to me, and it didn't initially seem like they were important, but then the more people kept mentioning them, I'm like, this person's important. And then you finally meet that person later, and you're like, oh my gosh. Like, so like the game's, what I think the game does so well is that it is just constantly weaving multiple threads together. So even if you're like, oh, where do I go? What do I do? Or you're like following down this one thread, that thread will naturally lead to like 2 or 3 or even more other threads you can follow. So everything is like interwoven in a way that just like keeps the momentum of the game like constantly pushing you forward.
Talk about how the world is structured, because I think that's an interesting point. In terms of like, it's not quite open world.
No, it's like 5-ish little zones that you kind of explore instead, and you can. It's interesting because at first you'd think like, oh, okay, like I have to explore all of the first zone, and then eventually unlock the next zone, and then the next zone. Not the case. You can immediately go to like all the major zones at any point, and you're constantly going back and forth between them. And I find like we compared it to Avowed a little bit in that it has that. So it's like these like little micro areas that feel small but are actually like extremely dense.
Yeah.
And there's a lot going on in them. And because you're constantly being, what I think this game does really well versus something like an Avowed, where Avowed kind of has you do a whole area and then move on, because this game has you bouncing back and forth between those areas. I never got tired of an area because I felt like it was keeping me moving around at a pretty good pace.
Also, something interesting that happened between us playing this game is how we each found important items in completely different places at different times.
Yep.
So I found a flashlight rather quickly when I know like Jake Decker on staff had not found a flashlight for ages. I had also stumbled across a metal detector, which you had not found at that point.
Nope.
But they're all scattered multiple times through the world, so it allows the player to be able to like naturally in their own rhythm eventually find that item that is important to your playthrough.
And there's always multiple ways to get items. There's multiple ways to find clues. There's multiple ways to like solve quests. So you don't, at least it could happen, but like I never ran into that problem where it's like, oh, I just need to find that one thing to solve this. Like there's always another solution. Or like I know in your case that you couldn't find a key, you know?
Oh yeah.
That was like, but that was because you were trying to solve it this very specific way, so you needed to find that specific key. But you could have also solved that quest
without
that key. You actually didn't need to spend that time finding it. You could have been like, well, I could just go do it this way instead. So in that sense, I haven't played a game that has had that quite level of like reactivity and just like, oh, can I do it this way? Oh, I can. Like since, I don't know, like I feel like New Vegas almost. Like it has that kind of like spirit about it. And like in that sense, that's where the Fallout sort of inspiration maybe comes from. Is not
not in its gameplay.
Not in gameplay,
not even in its world.
But in the way it sort of wants to feel like you as a player are able to like interact and manipulate things and having as many options available as possible.
Oh yeah, I was playing both sides of like 5 different people that wanted me to do something for them.
Right.
And I could do what they wanted or not do it, but then still tell them that I did and convince them that I did it. That would then lead them to still trust me, even though I completely am sidestepping them in every which way, which was really sweet.
Is there consequences to that?
Oh yeah.
Totally.
Oh yeah. I mean,
you'll get locked out of endings. You can also just kill everyone.
Everyone.
You could kill a quest giver.
Yeah, that's how.
Completely avoid, like, all right, well that quest is done.
Yep.
Sorry.
I was gonna point to Mark Delaney's review. Mark Delaney gave it a 7 out of 10, and broadly speaking, I think Mark Delaney's review is pretty on point.
Sure.
The one thing that I did find interesting, based on your experience playing it, was his criticism of combat. So, what is your view on combat?
Because it's split into two really. Like you have melee combat, and then you have different kinds of melee weapons that all act differently.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you still have the same set. You have like heavy attack, normal attack, kick. And
Yeah,
then,
for melee. Well, yeah, melee and you have guns, right?
yeah, and then guns are the other ones.
Yeah, so like the melee is pretty basic, if I'm being honest. Like to me, the melee isn't like the main way you would play the game. It's more of a like complementary to the gunplay, where they're rushing at me, quickly switch to my melee weapon and hit them, or throw my axe at them in the face, which is always super fun. But to me, the gunplay is kind of where I think the game shines the most. Like it's very slow. It's very deliberate. It takes place in the 60s, so everything is like World War II era, like single shot. You have very limited ammo, so you're not blasting enemies apart. This isn't.
You can even your capacity to carry ammo is limited.
It's very limited.
It's very small.
So every firefight feels very small, but very intense, because if you play the game on the recommended survivor difficulty, which is what I'd recommend, because that seems like what the state the game's trying to have you be in, you will go down in like 2 bullets. But enemies also go down really quickly. So if you get like a headshot, they'll go down. So it creates this really intense, frantic firefights where enemies will like rush at you and you're like, I need to be extremely on point because I only have 5 bullets and the reload is slow, but if I can get that headshot, it's so satisfying. And then it has this sort of reactivity where it's like, okay, now they're rushing me. I need to quickly switch to this weapon. I need to switch to Molotov. Like there's a level of improvisation that you have to do in the combat that I find very exhilarating and fun. I really have very little criticisms to say about the combat. Like I found it felt good. I know Mark didn't find that it felt as good to aim on console.
Yeah.
I personally didn't really have that issue. For me, it felt fine. I had no issues with that. But it's no like Destiny in terms of like feel. But to me, it feels exactly the way it needs to be to work.
Yeah, I think that Mark's kind of observation was that it's the same building blocks as the sniper games, which makes a lot of sense. So for him, for anyone who played those games and perhaps doesn't like the way that feels, you're at risk of feeling the same here. But I think for him, he also recently played and reviewed a sniper game. So there's some recency. They came out close together. And I think that the observation is an apt one, and it's a valid criticism to bring up, but it's like it doesn't feel like it fits into the type of game that they're making. It feels like a remnant of another game to him.
That's what I think it's always the thing that I like about this, what we're doing with the show, is the ability to look at someone like what Mark said in a review and then kind of figure out Mark's perspective versus our perspective on that.
So for like comparison, I've never played a Sniper Elite game. Like
I
don't have that comparison at all. So everything about this game felt like new and fresh to me, which is like, I think so. Like I just don't have that comparison. And if anything, I imagine for the Sniper Elite team, the Rebellion, like they're obviously trying to court a larger, different audience with this game. So I imagine they might be okay with that, having that shared DNA, because to them they're trying to instead maybe do something a little more different.
Sam, what is a Cornish pastry?
What is a Cornish pastry? It is a pastry, I guess. If you know what
have
pastry
you had one?
is. I have had one, but I've never had a meat-based Cornish pastry.
Got it.
Because they're associated with the place Cornwall, I believe. But it is basically like a pastry dough, which seems like could be sweet, but inside it's usually savory. So you have like a hot or warm, I guess. It's basically like a pie, a meat pie.
Or like an empanada, kind of?
Kind of an empanada, but like they use like the flaky pastry, phyllo pastry, or whatever it's called.
Oh, phyllo dough.
Yeah, they use the flaky pastry. So it's not like, it can be a mess, but it's good British comfort food.
Because they're all over the place now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
You are eating them all the
especially
time.
given
it's like you're eating that or like cans of meat.
Yeah, I mean, like it seems like the game is going for the countryside or like the northern kind of vibe to it, which Cornish pastries are way more popular there. Though they are still popular in like pubs and that kind of stuff. It's a good like pre or post drinking, I guess, food. I've seen a lot of my friends that I've grown up with or worked with have like a Cornish pastry before or after.
I just had a great moment real quick. It wasn't even a bug, but in my game, I completed a quest and as a reward.
You got Cornish pastry?
But my inventory was full, so it just floated in the air.
Exact same thing happened to me.
It just kind of just juggled in the air in between our conversation. I was like, oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
It just fell on the floor and I was like, really appreciate it. So
I wanted to ask, do you know what's a boffin?
A boffin, I need to know the context, but it might be it's a phrase used to describe like nerds.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Dorks.
Because all of the villagers describe all the scientists
As
who are working
boffins,
as
yeah.
boffins.
They're like Poindexter. Poindexter,
That's
like
awesome.
dorks.
Oh, I love that. Okay,
boffins.
that's great.
cool. You're such a boffin.
Boffin. Boff. Yeah, you can't say buff.
Boffin.
Boffin.
Such a boffin.
Off.
Would you, if boffins were cool, would you consider Atomfall a boffin?
A boffin.
How many boffins out of 10 would you give this?
How many boffins out of 10?
Out of 11.
Out of 11, I give it 12 boffins.
Wow!
Damn.
I like this game a whole lot. This is a game made for me specifically.
I also, and you're not going to hear me say my opinion on it much in this show, I also love that game.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's like if I have to be that person who like reduces it to like other games for comparison, to me, I would say if you like games like Stalker, if you like games like Metro Exodus, if you like games like Far Cry 2.
That's where I was
games that are.
It's got a bit of a Euro jank, which I like
it's got a little Euro jank. It's
and you can
slow.
Yeah, I'm
It's got
Euro jank.
friction in it. It's a game about friction.
Yeah.
And it's also like a smooth like 15 to 20 hour game.
Yeah,
It's gonna be on Game Pass.
it's on Game Pass, so if you
Which
want
is like to me like a no-brainer of just like if you
easy
have
breezy.
Game Pass and you're interested in that kind of game, you should check it out.
Well, that brings us to our last and final segment of the GameSpot show. Roll that applause for me, because we don't have enough people here. So I have to be the beautiful, look at me. Look how beautiful I am.
Wow.
We want Jake. Where's Jake?
Jake's behind the camera. And the audience is employed to clap. Give me a clap, audience. Yeah! All right.
Wow, that clap sounded exactly like the previous one.
I know.
They're well-trained.
That's because I've trained them so well. So this is the GameSpot Power Ranking Something or Another board where we, every single time, this has no real holding on what we do as a publication. This is nonsense.
I know.
Just letting the audience know.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, Tam. So
You
what
looked
we're
directly
doing,
in my eyes when you said it. Well, I know.
you need to know this. So this is where, so how this works for the audience, every single episode, at the end of every episode, we rank the games that have been reviewed. But the thing is, these you cannot move these. You can put something above or below them, but these are in place. And just for clarification, Lost Records is a review in progress, so that's floating in the ether as this moment. All right, Tamoor Hussain, since you're the first one,
Yes.
the first Berserker Khazan. Is it better? Is it better than Sniper Elite Resistance? Is it worse? Is it better than Avowed? Worse? Where would you put it in the board at this point?
Interesting. I think I would put it. I'm just thinking about this. Let me think.
Hurry up.
I think I would put it below Assassin's Creed.
Okay. Which is?
In the middle, purple. Assassin's Creed Shadow 8.
Oh, the only one that's not. The only one that is
your eyes are
different
directly
color.
in line with.
Jordan Ramey himself put it above Cabernet, which he gave a higher score.
Jordan loves the little quirky indie games.
Like Assassin's Creed.
Like Assassin's Creed Shadows. All right, Jean-Luc.
Okay.
Seipke, this is where things get interesting. Where would you put Atomfall among this list?
I want to start by telling the audience I haven't played Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 yet. I haven't played Split Fiction yet. Keep that in mind. Kurt, put Atomfall at the top of the board. It's my favorite game I've played this year. Like straight up. Like
All right.
You heard it here, folks. Damn, how you feeling right now?
That's wild. That's crazy behavior, but I respect it. You know. I'm glad someone's going for it.
Yeah.
So this means that for the rest
We have
of
a
the
10
year,
out of 10 game usurped by a 7 out of 10 game.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of
Absolutely.
oh, this is good. This just got real interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Atomfall is now the top of the GameSpot
That's right, folks.
Show power ranking
I
board.
swear to God, I know I'm going to get an email from the publishers of Atomfall to be like, hey, can we use this in our marketing? And I'm going to have to be like, hell no. Don't be crazy.
That's why I made sure to start this off with saying, this is nonsense. But it's nonsense that reflects us. Jean-Luc's
like my church is trying
Nailed
to kill
it.
me.
Woo! Yeah! Yeah! That's a real audience back there. You know, I try to be pretty indifferent in all this, but I support this decision. All right, everyone.
I support it. I don't endorse it. That's the difference.
I'm Kurt and Davina. You've been watching the GameSpot Show. Until the next time we continue to make this a work of art. See you later. Thanks for watching.